Alrighty, let's bring in criminal defense attorney Janet Johnson as we focus in on the jury. Who's going to be deciding this case? Janet, so good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Christy.
Sure. Okay, so here's what we know. There are 5 males and 1 female on this jury. 1 female. That struck me as surprising. I would have thought that the prosecution really would have fought for at least 1 other woman because, you know, from the standpoint of if there's anybody, if there's a woman, if there's a mom on that stand who can empathize with losing a child the way the Wilsons did. Is this an odd makeup to you?
I think it helps the defense, absolutely. I mean, I think women, in my experience, and as a woman, I think I can say this, are a little more judgmental. And what Mr. Goodman's accused of doing, leaving a young man, you know, for dead, basically, is something that I think most women would have a harder time with. And this whole defense of Mr. Goodman going to his man cave or his friend's man cave, that's something that I think guys might be more sympathetic to. That, I could see someone doing that after having an accident. He might need a stiff drink. I think a male jury setup is much more favorable to the defense, and you would have thought the state would have tried harder to keep some women on there.
Do you see juries with a makeup like this very often? Something that seems so imbalanced in terms of gender?
Yeah. I had a similar trial. There wasn't a death, but I had a client who blew a .24, and he had been at Morton's Steakhouse and had been drinking martinis, and he was a successful, sort of wealthy person. And I also wanted men on the jury because I think that they would look up to someone like that. They would relate to him more, even if they don't drive a Bentley. So it isn't normal to see the defense's objective fulfilled like that. And usually, because we get 3 strikes and the state gets 3 strikes, usually end up with something in between, which, both sides are going to have to live with. But in this case, that's why Roy Black is such a tremendous defense attorney. He got the jury that I think he would have wanted.
Well, let's look at the occupations of the folks on this who are sitting on this jury. 2 construction managers, an electrician, a retired accountant, a retired biology teacher, and a vegetation technician. Here's what stood out to us. This is solidly middle class, these folks, who, like me and everybody else, I think just cannot even fathom what a lifestyle must be like for somebody worth $300 million. Is that a problem? Would you want somebody on that jury who, at least had a couple mil?
Well, and that's the unusual makeup of Palm Beach County. They're some of the wealthiest people in the world, but most of them live there as second home. So they're not registered to vote there. That isn't where they would sit on a jury. And what you end up with in Palm Beach County are kind of the working class people. And you have to wonder, is there resentment towards a guy who's driving a Bentley?
Right.
I think from the defense, right. And from the defense perspective, the flip side is it might be better in terms of this theory that the Bentley malfunctioned, because, the kind of person who drives a Bentley might think, well, I have a Bentley and my Bentley never malfunctions. But, those of us who've never even been in a Bentley, let alone driven it, might not understand how it works as well. And that usually will benefit the defense. They're basically saying this Bentley, they're very, finicky cars. They're not as great as your, Dodge or your Toyota truck. You have to have somebody who maybe doesn't have that experience, who can't say, well, the last time I drove my Bentley, it didn't malfunction.
Okay,
that might help them.
Let me ask you this, though, because this is something I wanted to bring up. Roy Black did ask potential jurors if they were familiar with sudden acceleration specifically,
Right.
and if any of them thought it would be ridiculous that an electronic system in a very expensive car could malfunction during operation. Do you think, on the flip side of that, that some people might think, hey, maybe I've never had a Bentley, but if you're paying that much for a car, I can't imagine it malfunctioning like that.
Well, there were a bunch of cases with Lexus and Toyota, who make Lexus, where that did happen. And I had clients who came to me and said, I think that happened in my car. That's why I had the accident. And, you have to hire an expert. And they actually have an expert in this trial who's going to say that is what happened. But, I think it could go either way. It's an exotic car. And those of us who don't drive cars like that, we might look at it and think maybe there's a reason why they don't make that many of these cars. Maybe they are a little, more particular than my American-made, Ford. And
right.
It's a catch-22,
Okay, I wanted to bring up one other thing. Well, actually, 2 other things. Number one of the folks on this jury does have a battery arrest, but another one has a DUI conviction.
Right.
Did that surprise you when you look at what this guy's charged with?
Well, I like those people. You know, when I first started picking juries, I was told don't pick people with DUIs because if they didn't go to trial and if they pled and they sort of took their medicine, they might not like somebody fighting it. They might think, well, why doesn't he do what I did and just, plead guilty and take his medicine? But I find those people, they know that not all signs are signs of impairment, that you can have an accident without being impaired, that, if you're woozy and unsteady, that could be a sign of a concussion. If they thought they got a bad deal, they might be sympathetic to Mr. Goodman. And I tend to pick those people.
You do? All right, that's interesting to know. And then Prosecutor Sherry Collins, this was interesting, a question that she asked the jurors who had made it kind of to the final round for their thoughts on whether attractive people had an advantage. In other words, could someone be too good looking to go to prison?
Right.
So, I guess she thinks that John Goodman is extremely good looking, and I suppose that's subjective, obviously, but is that truly, is that a real concern that as an attorney you have for juries, that somebody could be sitting there thinking, that guy looks way too good to spend time behind bars?
I don't necessarily if they think about the sentencing because they're told over and over, it's not your job to worry about the sentencing. You're just here to, decide guilt or innocence. But I have had trials with extremely attractive people, usually women more than men, and jurors are hesitant to convict those people. They do
Why?
get the benefit. I think that maybe they have a fantasy that they're going to end up, currying favor with them, that, this is who they want to hang out with, so they don't want to be mean to them. Or if that's just our society, that we are drawn to people who look better. And I think that they get the true presumption of innocence if they look good, whether it's, put together or just, downright attractive. And a lot of people thought that in the first O.J. Simpson trial, back in that time, we all thought this is the juice. He's a good looking, all-American type guy. He got the true presumption of innocence. If you don't look like that, you don't get the benefit of the doubt, I think. And that's what she's trying to tell them. But I don't know if you can get that out of people. And, again, whether you think Mr. Goodman is attractive enough, I guess that's, a question of taste. She thinks he is, or she thinks there's a threat of that.
Right.
But, more so, I think he just has this persona. He drives a Bentley. He's, he was at a charity event. She's trying to combat that.
So that is just fascinating to me. All righty. Criminal defense attorney Janet Johnson, thank you so much for your insight.
Thanks.
Sure. She's going to be with us too next hour to answer